Okay, everyone. Welcome. I'm just adjusting the video quality. Seems to be a little grainier than I like. But anywho, welcome everyone. Welcome back. Um, we took a little break last week, but we are back uh, um, today. So welcome everyone, particularly everyone who's new. If you would like to, someone's from London. I feel so bad. It's midnight, I know. Um, so for my London folks, so there's a lot that's happening. I know I'm still in the middle of introducing the session, but um, I have a bunch of new stuff that I'm going to events, programs that we're going to start unveiling, and I have um, a special series of things that we're going to start doing for the UK folks. So I know that this is not the best time to tune in at midnight. I know because I was teaching this from the UK in March, and it was a lot. Um, but we're going to start offering um, some programs for UK time, um, which will be in the afternoon in Eastern time. But so we'll announce that in the next couple of weeks. We'll start that in July. But yeah, lots of things happening coming down the line. Lots of retreats um, coming online. A couple more retreats this year, including a Bumi Sparsha retreat, in-person retreat in Atlanta, an online retreat, Medicine Buddha retreat in July. I'm bringing back the Sacred Mother practice, Tara practice next month as well in June. So lots of stuff happening. But in any case, this is Medicine Buddha. So welcome everyone to this space. If you're new, this is a guided practice based upon the tradition of Medicine Buddha, which is a tantric deity coming from the Tibetan um, Vajrayana tradition. Now, there may be a little bit of noise coming in and out, so I'll try to um, kind of keep everything a little subtle. Um, so, I'm not in my house, by the way. Um, I'm actually in another location. But in any case, so we're kind of getting back into practice and continuing, I think, with the practice we left off with the week before, which is really getting back into allowing some of the energy that we're working with just kind of go where it needs to go right now. So that's a lot to say to begin with. But please continue to say hello in the chat. If you're new, please feel free to say hello as well. Um, the Bumi Sponsor Retreat will be in October, the end of October um, as well. Um, yeah, and yes, of course, a lot has happened since we met 2 weeks ago. So I know there's a lot that we're working with in terms of grief and exhaustion, sadness, despair, anger. And this is when we really just want to offer these experiences into the practice tonight. So we're gonna just have just a couple more minutes to let everyone start, to let everyone just kind of get into the space. Sometimes it's a little difficult to work with crowdcasts getting into the space. So if it's not quite on my website, not all the retreats that we're going to do this year. Best thing to do is to sign up for the newsletters for both Bumi Sparsha and for my newsletter as well. And that way you'll stay, you know, informed on everything that comes up. Um, yeah, there's something particularly about allowing ourselves to be cared for. Now, this is not a new theme in our practice, but allowing ourselves to be tended to by the practice. As I often say, allowing the practice to work for us, is critical, is essential. Um, when I practice, and it doesn't matter what the practice is, from ceremonies, rituals to prayer, to chanting, working with deities, whatever it may be, it is a practice of allowing myself to be cared for. One of the things that many of us struggle with is not knowing how to let go of everything that we've been absorbing, um, struggling with letting go of particularly the suffering, but more specifically, we struggle with these experiences of discomfort because we begin to self-identify with the suffering itself, right? So that creates a challenge for many of us. Because if we let go of the suffering, if we move with the trauma, if we allow ourselves to experience and release the sadness, then we don't know who we are, after that. When you let go of the thing you've been using to create a sense of self, then you enter into this kind of terror, which I would say, I don't want to use huge, big words, but it's almost an existential crisis, right? Like a real one, not like being 25 and just being like confused, but a real like, who am I? Like literally when I let go of this experience that I thought was who I was, like what happens next? What's next? You know, we can't keep identifying with the suffering because it's the suffering that's depleting us, you know, and the suffering really very like, you know, um, like very strictly considering like Buddha Dharma and Buddhist philosophy, we understand that suffering is a choice that we're making, right? And that's a hard one. Oh, and by the way, go ahead and start adding prayer requests as well. Um, this is actually why I wait and get wrapped up in talking about something for 2 hours because I'm kind of waiting for everyone to put their prayer requests up, so we can begin our practice. Who are we if we're not struggling? Who are we if we're happy? Frankly, like who are we possibly? Who can we possibly be if we're not always just miserable, right? Um, as I often say too, it's like we have to start identifying with the space instead of the contraction around sense of ego and self. Our natural state is not a state of contraction, of shutting down, of numbness. Our natural state is actually space. We're actually emanating from space and energy and emptiness. You know, how do we build a practice that points us back into the space instead of like wrapping us deeper? into the contraction. And this is why deity practice in Buddhist Tantra is really quite skillful, it's quite amazing, because it's through identifying with the deity, right, and knowing from the onset that the deity, Medicine Buddha, is an expression of space itself and emptiness and energy. Like when we start taking on the qualities, the essence of Medicine Buddha, we're actually remembering who we are. Like we're beginning to remember who we are. And right now, this is essential because everything that keeps happening, all the violence that we're surviving and the trauma that keeps being triggered and created for us, is this process of shutting down, contracting, right? And what we have to do is expand outward through these experiences, right? To consume these experiences, right? For those of you who um, have been studying consuming the world with me, you know, so consuming the world, consuming meaning that I don't allow phenomenal reality to consume me. Instead, I practice consuming the world, all phenomena, through awareness and through holding space. That means that we're going to start inherently experiencing, right? And because this is Buddhism, experience is the doorway to liberation, right? If you're not experiencing, you're not getting free, within this tradition. So again, just a reminder, if you have any prayers, go ahead and just post those if you want. This is optional. And I'll offer those prayers as we get into our practice. Questions, right? Questions go into the question box at the bottom of the screen there, and we will hopefully get to those at the end of our practice. But we're going to get started pretty soon as well, because it feels like everything's slowing down a little bit. All right. Okay. There's something else I was going to mention too. I'm just kind of sitting here thinking about it. I just can't. It was. I totally forget what it was. Um, oh, it'll come back to me in the middle of practice. Now, the past few practices we've been. This is exactly what I wanted to point out before we started practicing. So going back to Durga. So we started the Durga mantra last month, and or earlier this month. I want us to, and I'll offer instructions on this, but I want us to start working with the Durga mantra, which will be at the very end. This will be, we're going to do 3 mantras tonight. And the last mantra, Durga, um, is kind of a settling mantra. It's also a healing mantra that I've been using in my practice. But also, I want us to start thinking about protection. Um, what does it mean to experience protection? and particularly experiencing protection through this through the mantra, right? So we've been working with the visualization of blue light, right? And so I will probably offer something along the lines of imagining this blue light radiating from our bodies, that blue light becoming energy of protection for us. And then imagining that you're radiating this blue energy of protection into situations um, where people need protection, right? Um, I think that would be um, actually quite powerful and right in line with this. Um, I think protection is something that we have a lot of anxiety around. Um, and the, the reality of everything is that we're not in as much control as we think we are. So this kind of idea of control is an illusion, right? Because what we're trying to do in Buddhism is actually recognize that and to say, you know what, I can't control everything, but what I can control is how I relate, right, to what arises. And what I can control also is how I participate, become a part of giving rise to something that is not conducive to other people's safety. Um, that's what I have control over, right? Um, as my teacher used to say, whatever happens, happens, whatever comes, comes, right? And this is the attitude that we're cultivating here, because anything can come. This is samsara, the carceral state. Anything is possible, right? You know, I look at fantasy and sci-fi and horror movies and everything as like really creative suggestions on what could possibly happen. I think that everything is happening somewhere. you know, because this is certainly not the only world. This is not the, as I like to think sometimes, this is not the only party happening in the universe, right? This world system is not the only thing happening. So there's a lot happening in the universe, and you don't even get into like dimensions and you know, um, and realms and everything. You know. But what the Durga mantra does in this case is it begins to, we have some agency to shift circumstances, phenomena around us. Now, so we may call that magic, right? So this is, we are doing magic. This is a magic tradition, right? I know no one else will ever say that about Tantric Buddhism, but this is magic. We are impacting the phenomenal world um, through ritual and ceremony, right? Through intention, really. Um, but this is, I would say, good magic. This is the intention. Our intention is based in bodhicitta, right, which is this deep wish for all beings to be free. But it's not just a wish; it's also the work, the labor of getting free in order to get other people free from suffering. Absolutely. So from that intention, we shift the phenomenal world. We manipulate the phenomenal world. Right? Definitely through actions and speech and so forth. But we're doing it through energy. Right? We're connecting to the essence of phenomena, and we're learning how to channel the essence of phenomena into um, experiences of into experiences of benefit for others, including ourselves. Right? I think tuning into like this essential nature of things, which is space emptiness energy, is already benefiting us, right? Because we're able to tune into our most essential self, which is actually not perhaps the right word to use, self, but we're tuning into the very energy of our consciousness here, right? Getting back to this primordial experience of who we are. If we were to say we were something, we would say that this primordial experience of consciousness, which is this kind of intelligent energy, I would say, is what we're doing. So again, when we touch into the essence, we are remembering who we are, right? And this is why wisdom deities, in the case of Medicine Buddha, arise as vehicles of practice, because they arise out of emptiness and they lead us back into emptiness as well. As we also talked about, um, wisdom deities are also accompanied by retinue. So if you look at Tibetan pictures, tankas, iconography, a lot of them will have a central deity with other deities or figures around them. And it's called a retinue. And that retinue includes worldly deities who haven't necessarily transcended ego, um, but I wouldn't say that they were more realized than us either. Um, but they have cultivated, um, they've awakened into a higher level of consciousness because, quite frankly, there are some worldly deities who could use an attitude adjustment. Um, but worldly deities don't have to be beneficial or good, or kind or compassionate, you know. But those worldly beings who are trying to benefit, to help, right, align themselves with the expressions of wisdom deities. Wisdom deities express themselves directly uh, from emptiness itself, whereas worldly deities are just beings like us who still have an ego, but they're vibrating on a higher energetic plane, right? Um, and a plane that's closely aligned with this plane of existence. Um, and so they ally themselves with these great expressions of energies, Sambhogakaya, Buddhas, I would say. Um, and Sambhogakaya means energy, awakened energy beings, in this case. And take on the activity of the wisdom deity. So they act on behalf of the wisdom deity to help. So as I've said often, sometimes when we start connecting to these healing energies, they're not always medicine, but there's sometimes other beings who have aligned themselves with the main deity that you're practicing. Right? Some of these deities can be local deities associated with the land that you're living on. They can be ancestral deities, right? Which is a huge thing. And I know people who are reclaiming ancestral deities, because the deities, worldly ancestral deities, really stay with you um, from generation to generation, even if you have no idea who they are. That's why some of you will have these experiences with deities that you have no idea who and what they are, because your ancestors um, were very much aligned with them, right? And a common prayer, I think, is for people, in terms of relationships to deities, is to pray for these deities to protect their descendants, and that's um, a commitment that uh, certain deities make to protect um, uh, a familial line, you know, beginning with whomever evoked that deity as well. Now, some of these deities aren't quite beneficial. Either, as I've said before, you know, some of these deities actually need to be exorcised from your ancestral line, right? In the same way, his transhistorical trauma has to be exorcised, released, you know, from the ancestral line as well. Um, Sometimes you come up against that, you know, in deeper ceremonial practice, um, but sometimes you just never know until you know you get a you know you get involved in a practice that starts turning the lens into this energy embedded in your ancestry, right? And then you have to make a choice, like how do you relate to this as well. So I just find all this real fascinating, um, you know, as well. But the magic that we're again working with is this, you know, really magic of compassion. Um, Sometimes I call it like mind only magic, the school of mind only magic, or because it's, of course, this is tantra, right? It's just basic tantra, right? But we're working with subtle energy and energy within our bodies and experiences the energy in the phenomenal world, and we're learning how to ally with that energy, right? To start shifting that energy around, to start channeling it into projects that are helpful for everyone. Like this is what we do. We channel energy into what is beneficial, right? So I actually want to get started. Let's get started with practice now. I think everyone's posted everything now. So in in line with how we've been practicing the past few weeks, I want to start just with some really basic awareness work. You know, and again, this is very abstract, right? So if you're new to this, or if you are new to this, you know, it can still be quite challenging. But to begin with, right, just beginning to notice the space around you, right? Just if you're in a room, noticing the energy in the room. And this is the abstract part, because how do you notice energy? And one of the ways that we can tune into energy is by tuning into emotion. So emotion is energy, thoughts are energy, right? And usually our emotions are sometimes, often, somewhere between often and sometimes, our emotions are mirroring something, some energy in the space around us, right? Um, so another way into this practice is actually first by asking yourself, how do you feel right now? Right? And then noticing how you're feeling. And right now, just staying in the mental realm. So not working with the body quite yet, but just as a mental experience and as an emotional mental experience. How do you feel? Once you're able to name that and maybe experience a little bit of that, I want you to like shift your attention outwards again. So how do I feel? And then beginning to shift your attention into the space around you to link how you're feeling with a quality of energy in the space around you, and just see how this feels, right? Just see what you discover. Just get curious about this. And this is a great way also to tap into the consciousness of your home as well. I believe that our homes, our living spaces are conscious. Now, the consciousness of the home is different than the intelligent consciousness is wandering your home. So we like to call those ghosts and spirits, right? So whatever is, I don't actually like to use the word haunting too, because it's not always haunting. But if you're being bothered, you're being haunted. If you're not being bothered, you just have roommates. Um, or you have some casual visitors who don't pay rent or mortgage. I digress. So there you can start turning into two kinds of conscious energies: the conscious energy of the physical home, which I believe is conscious as well. And you can start tuning into the consciousness of spirits. But, and spirits also including deities and other kinds of formless beings. Whoever thought that you were really signing up for Paranormal Psychology 101? Actually, this is Mediumship 101. Paranormal Psychology is a whole other thing. But anyhow, so again, like I'm not saying that you should be having an experience or whatever, but this is how we start developing an awareness of things. Like we just start looking, we start becoming aware, we start asking questions like, what is this that I'm feeling? What does this have to do with the space around me? And as to how do we differentiate house consciousness with other consciousness, it just takes time to actually figure out what that feels like for you, what the difference is for you. But one practice that I'll offer is that when you want to know how your home is, just shift your attention and imagining that you're just connecting to the home directly. And that's going to take awareness directly to your home's consciousness. And again, you can do this with the land, you can do this with all kinds of any object, but we're not going to go down that road tonight. So the home. And just notice what thoughts, uh, emotions, messages start coming up. What's the first thing that you're sensing? You can tune into the other intelligent consciousness in your home, but you don't have to do that right now. And whatever we stir up or get going, we're going to settle it once we get into the practice anyway. So you don't need to worry about that. Now, some of you will be, I would say, distracted by the collective consciousness right now, which is just everyone, everything, how everything is feeling, right? And that's a different kind of heaviness and intensity right now that you'll be able to differentiate from other kinds of energies. So you can feel that, because we're talking about just different frequencies or vibrations, right, that you can attune to over time. Just one more minute here. And this is important. I'm doing this on purpose because hopefully I want us to notice how we begin to change and shift energy when we get into practice, when we get into Medicine Buddha. So we're going to end our practice with this kind of awareness work at the very end. And so for those of you who want to go just a little bit deeper, right? So we're going to expand our awareness through these experiences of energy, of consciousness. And we're going to start resting in this essential experience of stillness. Stillness. So everything is moving, right? It's, noises, distractions, all kinds of phenomena, right? Stimuli, everything's rising. So it doesn't matter what's arising, because we can just lean forward a little bit, expand gradually, and beginning to touch into this experience of stillness that lies at the heart of everything. And we want to get there because that is the seed, the birthplace, I would say, the birthplace of the wisdom deity, the deity that expresses themselves directly from the experience of emptiness and space itself. And in that emptiness, everything begins to be held. So you're not reacting to everything, but everything is just held within this boundless awareness, your boundless awareness, which is the same as your consciousness. Touching into the stillness is very similar to touching into or experiencing the eye of a hurricane or a tornado or something like that, where the center is calm. The center of everything is stillness. The stillness is real, right? Where everything else can become, it feels like an illusion. One more second here. And this is where we're going to begin offering our first mantra, our opening mantra, from the stillness. And our opening mantra is Minla Sange Kino Soha, or actually Minla Sange. So Minla Sange, Medicine Buddha, Kino, know me, which is a word that says know me, think of me, Soha, so may it be. Minla Sange Kino Soha. We're awakening the enlightened, liberated consciousness of Medicine Buddha. When we say liberated consciousness, it means that it is a consciousness that knows it's liberated, as a consciousness that reflects, that can reflect itself, right? And so when, this is a little tricky to explain, but when, like we've explained this before, but it's when you line two mirrors up in front of each other, you can see the image in one of the mirrors of like this endless passage, because the reflection is refracted. I don't know what the word is, reflected countless times. So it feels like it's like this portal that's going in. And that's what happens when consciousness recognizes itself. It becomes boundless. And so when we awaken an enlightened, liberated consciousness like Medicine Buddha, we're awakening a consciousness, or we're calling this consciousness into the space that is boundless, right? And we're trying to mimic that labor of our consciousness becoming aware of itself. Consciousness becoming aware of consciousness. But you don't have to think about that, because this is why the mantra arises for us in practice, to begin to create the conditions for this to start happening. Like, this is our training, right? To begin to become conscious of consciousness. Okay, so we'll begin with the mantra. We're going to chant it a few times. and just remaining as close or in the stillness as much as you can. We'll begin. Om La Sange Kino Soha. Om La Sange Kino Soha. Om La Sange Kino Soha. Now checking in again with your experience. What's different? So when we start using this language of resting the mind, so resting the mind essentially just means holding space. Holding space means we are not reacting, but allowing whatever to arise in our minds to arise. Right? So this is a little bit of a slow kind of takeoff tonight into the practice, but these are the subtle nuances, well, the subtle nuance experience of consciousness. Consciousness is just extremely subtle, extremely nuanced, right? And this is the birthplace of the deity, of the wisdom deity, particularly. This is what worldly deities are aligning themselves in and around to be of help. Okay? So a couple more moments here. And one more instruction here. We're really connected to the suffering, right? Everything that we're struggling with, the discomfort, that's present. So, given where we are right now in the practice, and what we're trying to do, right? I wonder if you can practice letting go of everything you feel as if you're holding on to, and allow your consciousness to sink deeper into the stillness. Like, what would that be like? To say, yes, here's the sadness, the anger, rage, sorrow. And I wonder if you can sink beneath that deeper into the stillness. Okay? So, in this space, I invite you to begin to call in your benefactors. So, you can go through the seven homecomings practice. For those of you who are new to this, just imagining that all the beings who love you, who care for you, that they're all gathering within this really subtle stillness, right? And by calling in our benefactors, we begin to evoke this quality or this manifestation again of wisdom deities where they are accompanied by worldly deities who are in line, with their work, right? Who also want to help. You know? So again, all of our benefactors, both living and passed on, ancestor spirits, other deities, people, in our lives, the earth. And imagining that these energies, these beings are beginning to gather and populate in the stillness. And of course, they're bringing nothing but love and care into the space. And of course, they're radiating this energy of care into the stillness, into the space. So there's a kind of um, weightiness or a kind of density, I would say a density to the energy when this energy of care and love radiating from these benefactors begin to be radiated into the space. So the energy becomes denser. So it's a heaviness of care. And again, because we're working on such subtle, rarefied levels of consciousness, or at least we're attempting to, right? Um, you're learning or you're developing a sensitivity to what this feels like on a really fundamental level. This is what care feels like. And this is how you cut through the static, the chaos, the noise of everything right now. Is learning how to beam into this experience. That I know what these levels of consciousness feel like, and I know what the energy of care feels like because this is where I practice. And I can take this practice out into the world. And when I find myself distracted by everything, I can come back to this. And for me, this is a practice of protection, actually, being situated within this experience. And some of you are meeting some levels of anxiety, right? So, nothing, we're not trying to disappear or erase anything. We're never trying to do that in Buddhist practice, right? We're trying to disrupt reactivity and experience the illusion of everything. That's what we're trying to do. So if the anxiety is there, because you're getting deeper and deeper into these levels of consciousness, you're going to get into these subtle expressions of things, and you again, you're not reacting, you're holding, you're experiencing, you're keeping tuned into the stillness at the heart of all, of everything. So I know so many of us struggle with, particularly if you're coming out and practicing within Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, or Tantra Buddhism. Some of us struggle with visualizations. And visualization isn't the point here. It's training in experiencing these levels of consciousness and energy. Becoming sensitive. So we're going to transition into our main mantra. Teatao, Baconse, Maha Baconse, Rasa Sumum Kante, Soha. I'll be using a different drum tonight, using a huge ceremonial drum. So the sound will be just a little bit different. But as we transition into the main mantra, I want you, and I invite you, to allow an experience of Medicine Buddha to arise. But I don't want you to manipulate anything or create anything or imagine anything. I just want us to allow the mantra to shape space and emptiness and energy and stillness into something that is appropriate for us, that is an expression of the archetypal healer, which Medicine Buddha represents, the universal healer. What takes shape, what takes form? And I wonder, again, if you can just allow yourself to keep resting within this, because this is a really, 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 really foundational experience of healing happening right now. Even if you're struggling with this, even if you feel like you're distracted and far away, this is still working, right? This is also the essence. I know I keep using this word essence over and over again, but this is also how pointing out instructions work, right? In Tibetan Buddhist tradition, like when we get the nature of things pointed out, it's not like we go there automatically, right? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, right? But the point is to receive instructions that move you in a direction towards the essence of things. And that is amazing work, to be shown the direction. Even though we're not there yet, at least we get shown the right way to go. And that is extremely beneficial. Even if we're struggling with it, it's still beneficial. Right? So Teatao, Baconse, Maha Baconse, Rasa Sumongate, Soha. Teatao, Baconse, Maha Baconse, Rasa Sumongate, Soha. Teatao, Baconse, Ma Baconse, Rasa Sumungate Soa. Teata 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 Baconse, raza sumungate suwa. Teatam begenze, begenze, maha begenze, 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 raza sumungate suwa. I want to offer our prayers for our practice. And again, just making a special effort to call into the space all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dharma protectors, all the guardians and protectors of the land, all the elements, including the earth elements, calling in all our angels, our benevolent ancestors, all of our descendants as well. Calling compassion, love, kindness, faith, and hope in everything, these qualities, to guide the offering of our prayers. And we ask all those invited beings to work on our behalf, to bring about what we most need from our prayers, both for ourselves and for those that we're praying for. We're offering prayers for Bill Russell, who is in the hospital with a bad bacterial infection, and for his family. Offering prayers for my brother-in-law, Ruben, disowned by his family for his homosexuality and who died in prison. Prayers for Mark as he passes into the bardo today, and Dan as he grieves. We're offering prayers for my father, a pillar for his community who is lost in delusion and suffering as his past abuses are coming home to roost. We're offering prayers for all who are suffering, prayers for the victims of the recent mass shootings, prayers for me that I may find clarity as I navigate resigning from my job and the identity that I've had with this job. Prayers for my mom, who's been grieving the loss of her ex-husband and who just passed away. And prayers for him as well as he makes his way through the bardo. Offering prayers for Robin and David, who is recovering from a massive brain tumor. We're offering prayers for Rebecca, who passed away, and all of us who love her. Prayers for Marnie in cancer treatment. Prayers for my father in pain. Offering prayers for Francis Culp, who died a year and a half ago. We're offering prayers for the victims of gun violence. Prayers for Becky as she manages her health crisis. We're offering prayers for Joanne's dad, who is entering the bardo. Prayers for John and his family. Prayers for all to find ease. We're offering prayers for my husband who lost his mother, which is complicated by her alcoholism and trauma. Prayers for Rob, Lucas, and Julian. We're offering prayers for Bren. Offering prayers for Ben's father of Amber. Offering prayers for Salah and for her mothers. Offering prayers for my ancestors still in the bardo. Offering prayers for Ryland. Offering prayers for my brother Joseph, who deserves peace and happiness. Offering prayers for the parents and families, especially the mothers of those babies killed in the Uvalde, Texas shooting. Prayers for Adele and Amita's Dreamer and for Elizabeth. Prayers for Mateo and Elizabeth as they transition back to spirit. Offering prayers for Scarlett having surgery tomorrow. Offering prayers for those in Buffalo and in Uvalde who lost loved ones. Prayers for all who are grieving this violence. Offering prayers for all who are suffering. Gratitude for all teachers and communities. Offering prayers for to Corey as he sits in prison. May he find a way through the trauma and pain and follow the golden thread to a new life. Prayers for my father who abused and tortured me when I was a child. May he be free. I want to offer prayers for your heart, for all those who are practicing in this moment together, that your heart is filled with space and tenderness and hope, that you have access to all the resources that you need to be well and cared for, and that all of our communities that we belong to have access to resources that they need to be well as well. I offer all the prayers that remain unspoken. I pray for a new world. I pray for a world where all of us, regardless of who we are, have access to the resources that we need to be well, happy, and safe. That all systems of violence are disrupted, that we come into a realization of who we are and what we are. And I pray that the stillness, the space, the care that we're connecting to in this moment, that it is offered out to all of those whom we've offered prayers for, and out really to all beings, both seen and unseen. And may this offering, this act of compassion, pacify any harmful energies and beings who are creating suffering for us. May this offering ransom all beings from the experiences of being bound or tormented or haunted. May they be free from those relationships. We all essentially get free as quickly as possible, remembering our innate Buddhahood. May it be so as quickly as possible. We're going to return our practice back to the mantra, the main mantra. As we move back into the mantra for the last time, just allowing this stillness to expand, to hold everything and everyone we've offered prayers for, but also to hold all phenomena. Where all phenomena actually becomes an expression of the enlightened consciousness of Medicine Buddha. That everything is awakened and resting within that awakened experience. O te begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumungate sua. 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 Te 베아tom베근제 베근제 마베근제 라스수문야테소아 제아tom베근제 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 베근제 마베근제 라스수문야테소아 For those of you who are working with the breath, I invite you to imagine breathing deeply into the heart center, holding the breath in the heart center for about 3 seconds, and then releasing out from the heart center. And just doing that 2 more times. As you inhale, imagining that the inhale begins to break up, dissolve the tension that you're holding in your chest. And then when you exhale, you're exhaling that tension out of the chest, out of the heart center, really. Just letting go. So finally, we'll turn our attention to the last mantra, to Durga's mantra. Om Drum Durgaye Namaha. Dum Durgaye Namaha. So a prayer to Durga, the Great Mother, one of the strongest expressions of the Mother. From Tantra. And as we begin to chant this again, just imagining that this blue light begins to awaken, beginning in the heart center, beginning to fill your body and beginning to radiate into the space around you. And we're imagining and developing a kind of faith in the mantra and the energy, that this energy is actually creating protection by first beginning to shift energies around, beginning to unravel things and straighten things out and clarify things, right? And this is an expression of protection. Unraveling these energies that draw, or purifying and cleansing energies that draw harmful energies to us. And eventually I want you to imagine that this blue light begins to fill up your whole space. Your whole space becomes protected through the blessings of the Sacred Mother. And we'll begin the mantra just by chanting and then we'll go into the mantra. All right. We'll begin. Dum Durgaye Namaha. Om 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 Namaha. Om Dum Daya 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 Namaha. Om. So slowly letting go, dissolving anything that you've been holding on to, any visualizations, any hopes or fears, or anything. Letting it all go. Dissolving everything into this primordial emptiness space. Back into that essence. Turning your attention to the weight of your body. Making contact with the seat. Feeling the seat rising to hold you, to care for you. And when you're ready, just bringing some movement into maybe doing a little bit of stretching. We're going to transition into our closing prayer. This is Shanti Davis' prayer from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. We're going to recite this 3 times together. Okay. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. So, ding dong, bell, 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 and so forth. I have some very loud kittens here. Questions? How do we work with frustration? That comes out as short tempered, being short tempered or short tempered. I enjoy your thoughts on passive aggressiveness. I've often enjoyed being passive aggressive in the past as well. So I think maybe that's an issue that I can have to continue working on myself. But right, talk about frustration, the temper. I mean, it comes from the hurt. Like you want to work on the temper, work on the hurt. Like work on creating really just the system of care for yourself. We're short tempered because we're not getting the resources that we need, right? And that temper is a reactivity to the discomfort of being really not cared for. I mean, or rather, the pain beneath the frustration not being cared for, right? So when we start creating care, really start getting into the roots of this, then the temper, the outbursts in frustration, it changes. You know, I can move through the world differently now because I tend to my own basic hurt and brokenheartedness and sadness, right? And so when I'm in the world having to deal with stuff, right? Like I have the space and the groundedness that has come from taking care of myself to take refuge in. You know, compassion is also a big part of this as well. You know, once you begin to understand the circumstances that we're really in, that's gonna actually help us to practice more patience with people. Because we really understand how hard it is to be free from these habitual patterns of suffering, including trauma, right? That everyone's hurting, right? But not everyone is tending to the hurt. Um, and then, can you say something about the role of thoughts and words, mantras, prayers, and the circle as you personally open and deepen into the vast, still emptiness? I often experience that the very thought form, the very through forms that seem to deliver me to this expanse also can act as constrictions of consciousness that keep me from fully opening to some profound vastness. Right. So basically, language and concept gets in the way of of the emptiness. Right. You have to see concept like mantras, for instance. You have to see them as something that's just simply arising from the emptiness, right? And that's gently guiding you back into the emptiness. Again, it's the image of the waves on the ocean. So the ocean, like mind practice, right? The waves rise from the ocean, um, but the waves return back to the ocean, right? In the same way, a concept arises from the mind, and then that concept falls back into the mind, right? Um, and what happens too is that we get really subtly attached to the concept and we start building more narratives and concepts around that one concept. And so one helpful thing that when you start practicing is like when you're using concepts like a mantra, right? Begin to feel the mantra as something really fluid and translucent, um, and ephemeral. Ephemeral is a word we can use in this context, but relate to all phenomena as fluids, transparent, translucent. That's the dreamlike quality that we're trying to connect to. And that's going to start busting through the realness of everything. It's going to give us a lot more space to be in the world right now. Right. So this isn't bypassing. Like you're not again, bypassing is like erasing, skipping. No, you're going into it, right? But you're going into it saying that like, and this is an expression of something, of emptiness itself. Okay. Um, I think that's it. One. I'll see you next Monday again, and I hope that this practice takes care of you, sustains you, and hopefully this week, at least on the Booming Smartship side, we'll be sending out more dates um, um, for practice that are coming up next month in June, in July. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see you later.